Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bryce Duke, and my online learning module was about World War I. For my Georgia Virtual School field experience, I was given the task of evaluating a 10th grade world history class. And one of the units in the world history class was called World at War, which contained information from World War I, the time in between the World Wars, and World War II. So in order to really grasp the gravity of the entire unit, I wanted to start at the beginning and do my own with World War I and the causes of it, which would later be felt throughout the first half of the 20th century. So with that, let's get started. Let me tell you what we're going to be doing here. So first, I'm going to start with the instruction sheet. The module instructions, you'll be investigating the following Georgia Standard of Excellence, where I posted the standard and the 4 substandards. It was SS World History 17, demonstrating understanding of long-term causes of World War I and its global impact. So I listed all of that here. I also put a small little blurb about World War I just to kind of set the scene a little bit as far as the great turmoil in Europe, the military and political effects of it both before, during, and after, and how it would ultimately lead to even more conflict in the future. I also listed the things that it will be participating in this module. First was a World War I parody video, which I'll give you a little preview of in a second. Narrated PowerPoint that I did discussing the beginnings of the World War I, which were somewhat confusing due to a lot of different entangled alliances and lots of different little characteristics of many different countries that helped to create this giant fireball of a war, as they will later determine. 4 PowerPoint presentations that I did not narrate that give insight into the first years of the war, the middle part, as well as the end and after effects, which would lead into the later years following the war in the 20s and 30s. A discussion post that must be completed, as well as a World War I newspaper article assignment, which I will discuss when I get there. Told everyone that the directions for the discussion and the newspaper article assignment are posted in the Dropbox pages themselves. And all assignments must be completed by Sunday, July 27th for an arbitrary day in which they must be completed. So first is the World War I parody video, which is a parody of the song We Are Young by the band Fun. This is a YouTube video that by a history teacher named Mr. Betts that one of my student teaching cooperating teachers actually introduced me to. He does these on several different topics for world and U.S. history, and it's for a song that most students would recognize, and I figured it would be a nice little way to introduce them to the topic in a fun way while also getting a little bit of information in as well. Moving on. So I did the World War I beginnings narrative PowerPoint. This is a YouTube link that has the entire PowerPoint on it. I used a Screencast-O-Matic, which is a fantastic website, by the way. Thank you for the recommendation. So I have the YouTube video here. I talk through the alliances, the beginnings of the war, as well as the inciting event in Sarajevo, just because it can be a little confusing for a 10th grader especially to pick up on all of the geopolitical moving that was going on during this time that ultimately led to this war. So since I was in control of the PowerPoint uploaded as a YouTube link, I included the PowerPoint just in its raw form as a PDF at least, so that they can use it afterwards to look at everything. So this is the same PowerPoint that I discussed on the YouTube video, just in here for future reference in case they needed it for anything else. I also have other PowerPoints that discuss the war in different chunks. So the beginnings of the war and how each different how the alliance system brought several different countries in that may not have been directly involved with the inciting events, but the alliance structure brought several of them in, and ultimately all of these countries to say, well, I have your back, ended up getting involved. It's got lots of great pictures, maps, military strategy in here, all kinds of great stuff that would give a lot of insight into how things went with World War I. The next one that I included in here was about trench warfare and weapons, as well as major battles such as Verdun and the Somme. This talks about trench warfare, the difficulties of living in trenches, new weapons, so machine guns, poison gas, armored tanks, large artillery, as well as just the sheer number of men that were involved in fighting with this was unseen throughout the war before that, or throughout the history of warfare up to that point. This talks about Russia and their involvement and then eventual withdrawal due to their own internal problems as well. Then we talk about the United States and their entry in 1917. A lot of the work that these students will do, both with the discussions as well as the newspaper assignment, are somewhat centered on the United States and their involvement in world history as a whole, as they were influenced by the acts of other nations in Europe, Asia, Africa. It talks about how they came in and effectively ended the war after a relatively short time. And then finally, the last PowerPoint talks about the somewhat shaky peace that was negotiated, if it'll load, that was negotiated by the leaders in November 1918 and into 1919, which gives a little bit of a clue into how the events would end up leading to the Second World War and the tensions that would come about in the 20s and 30s. So this PowerPoint right here especially would help to build onto future knowledge if a World War II unit came on after this. So that's all of the required information that had to be read or listened to. Then we have a discussion topic for a question that I formulated myself, which talked about how was it necessary that the United States joined World War I based on the information that they've seen, or was it an avoidable tragedy for Americans? So this ties in American history, which they would be more familiar with, and also America's place in the world and how they are affected by international diplomacy and how they also affect international diplomacy. I feel like it would be a very riveting discussion from the eyes of a 17-year-old especially. All right, and then finally, I have a World War I newspaper article assignment. So I have the instructions here that students will create what essentially would be a newspaper front page of if they were a newspaper editor in 1917, which would explain why the United States was officially entering the First World War. So they would be required to talk about unrestricted submarine warfare by the Germans, which is mentioned in the PowerPoints, the sinking of the Lusitania, which is mentioned in the PowerPoints, the 128 Americans that were killed in that sinking, and the Zimmerman telegram, which also was mentioned in the PowerPoint. As these three huge reasons were a major factor into why they joined the war. So in order to do this, students must have at least 4 short paragraphs. They would be able to find that in plenty of time. They would be able to formulate that with all of the information they have, as well as using other outside web sources that would adequately summarize each of the required events that were listed. And along with the front page article, they would have to include a headline, at least 2 appropriate pictures with captions, the official date of the United States entry in World War I. All would be vital parts of this, which would help to explain what was going on and why they were writing about it. So with that, that is my World War I module. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm really excited to see you guys' feedback on it. I put a lot of work into this, and I'm really excited to see how it goes. Thank you.